Hello, everyone. I'm introducing today's subject, toxic behavior, how to recognize it, and what to do when you encounter it. I have to say, Jaya said it's an interesting topic. It's also a very challenging subject to address. First, we have to define what toxic behavior is, because what is toxic for one person is not necessarily toxic for the other. We have to come to some agreement on what toxic behavior is. Then we need to look at ourselves. Once we are clear and agree on what toxic behavior is, we have to look at ourselves and to see if we are or not toxic ourselves. And if we are, make a commitment to work on it and to transform it. And then only then we need to look around us and see if there is toxicity around us. And yet there is another challenge on our journey dealing with toxic behavior. And that is, while we are looking at other people, we must be acutely aware that their toxicity may trigger in us, if not toxic behavior, but possibly toxic feelings such as judgment, agreement, anger, resentment, or vengefulness. So, as I said, it's a very challenging subject, at least for me. And so we, to help us with this issue, we invited Tiara Fennell. She is the director of the Center of Healthy Families at University of Maryland. Tiara is about to receive her PhD in Human Development and Family Studies from Virginia Tech. So without further ado, Tiara, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate it. And I thank you all for joining and being interested in all the what I hope to be very helpful things I have to say about toxic behaviors and recognizing and dealing with these things in our personal relationships. Let me see. So Jaya, will you be doing the slides for me? Oh, no, I can't hear you. She's talking, but I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I was muted. Okay, sorry. So
No,
I just want to set up the issue with some broad statistics, Tiara, if you don't mind. And of the list of toxic behaviors, and Tiara's going to give us a really detailed look at that. We have chosen to focus on narcissism and gaslighting this evening in the realm of personal relationships, as Tiara's title says. And the recent research does show that 0.5% of the US population, or 1 in 200 people, has narcissistic personality disorder. Tiara's going to explain to us what that is. We also we're also going to talk about gaslighting, which is actually known as a form of abuse. And we see it so much these days, and I'm doing a lot of consulting and coaching around it. The term gaslight does come from this movie, the 1944 movie, and it is, as I said, a form of abuse and has long-term effects that can affect people without them even knowing. So just wanted to set that up as one of the reasons, or as the reasons, that we are focusing on these issues this evening. So Tiara, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
No worries. Well, we can go to the next slide. So I wanted to first kind of start off fairly broad. As you all know, and what was just set up for us, the focus of the conversation tonight is gaslighting and narcissism. But I kind of wanted to kind of break those things down a little bit more for us. So as you can see here, these are a list of just general toxic behaviors. Something that I think that's important to note is that these are usually what, in my profession, what I would call a symptom of, some larger issue. These things come up when people are struggling with some sort of personality disorder. Sometimes it comes up due to a lack of adaptive coping skills for themselves and how they navigate other relationships. But for the sake of the presentation, I want to zoom in a little bit more on gaslighting and narcissism and breaking those down a little bit more. So we can go to the next one. So gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse, in which a person or a group causes someone to question their own sanity, memories, or perception of their reality. Some of the signs of gaslighting is being confused, anxiety, a distrust of yourself. And part of why this is harmful is because it does leave the victim to learn to distrust their own intuition. It assists in them reasoning to remain in relationships or situations that really aren't the most compatible for them or aren't adaptive for them. I think something that I like to note and highlight in my own clinical work is a lot of times gaslighting and some of these other toxic behaviors aren't as intentional as they feel when people are executing them. I think when it comes to like the relational type of therapy that I do, helping partners understand, one, what some of these behaviors are and how to identify them within themselves, as Peter highlighted before. Once you learn this information, it's important to reflect, how are we engaging? How are we, how are we responding to the things that are happening to us? Are we being toxic? And so once people understand that, it usually becomes to a point where they are able to say, well, that wasn't my intention. That wasn't what I was trying to do. But because of a lack of coping skills and at times a lack of just, understanding how to communicate, we get gaslighting. So I kind of wanted to humanize one of these behaviors and even narcissism in a sense, not to excuse them for the harm that they do, but so we can also better understand what might be going on for others and how we can better set boundaries for ourselves, which I'll get into more a little bit later when it comes to things you can do to help cope if you're dealing with this. We can go to the next one. So what is narcissism? Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. They need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. And people with this disorder tend to lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others. Most of the time, and I'd like to kind of emphasize that this is an actual DSM diagnosis. And so even in our culture today, sometimes in our conversations, it's a term that we throw out, to kind of highlight, I think, someone who is exhibiting some of those toxic behaviors that I listed in my previous slide. But I do want to make that differentiation between the diagnoses, but someone also may be having narcissistic tendencies. Both of which are, not okay in terms of the harm they do, whether it is intentional or unintentional by the person who is enacting these behaviors. So what does it look like? People with this disorder can, like I said, have an unreasonably high sense of self-importance, require constant praise, feel like they deserve privileges and special treatments. They are expected to be recognized as superior, even without achievements, so on and so forth. Kind of really grandiose behavior. And when you see this in someone, I think it's difficult for them, as a previous slide said, to really be able to empathize. That's one of the major keys in recognizing narcissism, or even narcissistic tendencies in someone, is their inability to empathize and understand what other people are going through, kind of blinded by their own need for the attention that they're seeking. So that's something that, I wanted to highlight as well. We can go to the next slide and talk about how some of these symptoms impact you. So if you are someone who has experienced narcissistic abuse, toxic behaviors, gaslighting, these are some of the symptoms and the things that you can see. A loss of sense of self-worth, your inability to forgive yourself, have grace with yourself. Sometimes it culminates in physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, difficulty sleeping, cognitive issues like memory loss, developing people-pleasing tendencies, and then there's a list and illustrations of other things that come up as well. One of the main things that I have found that people tend to struggle with after dealing with someone who is narcissistic or has narcissistic tendencies, is this very strong sense of self-doubt. And for me, in my professional opinion, that is the part that is most heartbreaking. Being able to trust yourself and feel confident in yourself and the decisions you make, and how you feel, and knowing that you can trust that is, I think, something that's really important for us as human beings. And when it feels like that is something that is taken away from you, it kind of takes away your autonomy. It takes away your ability to reason and logic at times. And it usually causes us to kind of shift into this very, how would I say, confused state. And I think a lot of times how these behaviors continue to be perpetuated in other relationships, people being victim of others who exhibit these types of behaviors or have these particular diagnoses, who don't know how to navigate it, don't know how to, enact adaptive communication skills, so on and so forth. And this is how these things continue to perpetuate. So with that being said, we can go to the next slide and think about how can we deal and heal with narcissism.
Is protected under the ADA if he or she has a physical or...
Is that me? I'm sorry, y'all. Okie dokie. So, how to heal from narcissistic abuse. I think the most important part, and what usually most people struggle with, is acknowledging and accepting that the abuse happened. Acknowledgement and acceptance is like the first step. When you know something is a problem, that's how you can begin to heal and be able to find the steps that work best for you. I'm trying to be mindful of time, so I'm going to try to speed through this a bit. Being able to set clear boundaries, and the boundaries should be centered on what you will do and how you will respond in situations. I think a lot of folks try to enact boundaries that require other people to act differently, and that's not exactly how it works, and why it usually tends to kind of fall on deaf ears, if you will. So being focused on, if this behavior persists, I will not do this, or I will respond in this way, and being able to hold fast to those things. Not quite ready yet. Also preparing for your own complex emotions. This experience in the aftermath of healing from narcissistic abuse or abuse of any kind, to be honest, is going to have its ebbs and flows. It's going to have its moments of grief and longing, but also anger and frustration, because this is someone, whether it is a romantic relationship, a family relationship, or a friend, someone that was important to you, but you recognized harm you in some way, whether it was intentional or not. And so the healing that it takes to go through that and be able to acknowledge the full truth of an individual who might be embodying these behaviors is something that's going to take you on your own roller coaster for yourself. So just having grace with yourself and all the different feelings that are going to come up. I think one that I find to be the most important is learning to get reacquainted with yourself, spending a time alone, remembering who you were before then, who you are now after these experiences, and learning to embrace yourself and trust yourself again, I think, is the most important part. The rebuilding of that, as we talked about before, gaslighting is a particular sort of manipulation that it requires that the person who is experiencing it doesn't trust their intuition, what they know to be true. You question yourself. So that's a big part of healing after narcissistic abuse or dealing with gaslighting or toxic behaviors. Practicing self-compassion, having grace, talking to others. I think this is a very big one. I think sometimes we are experiencing things that we don't know that we're experiencing because we think it's normal, or because, certain parts of this relationship feel good while others may not, but you kind of take the good with the bad. But when you start talking to other people, hearing other people's experiences, sometimes that's an opportunity for things to be highlighted for you, to help you recognize, no, this is actually something that's not typical in a healthy relationship of this sort. Maybe you should ask more questions about this. Maybe you should think about this more deeply. So being able to have people that you trust and that can be honest with you when you are dealing with these things and help you process and logic out like what you're actually experiencing is abuse. And the final piece is just seeking professional support I think, there's plenty of resources that I'll get to here in just a second, that would be helpful as you journey through trying to heal from narcissistic abuse. And it is not a substitute for professional support from a therapist, support groups, these kinds of things where someone can really offer you some good skills and reflections and tools to not only heal from this experience, but hopefully be able to spot warning signs earlier on as you continue to build relationships. That's a part of our human experience that I think is a luxury. But it's also important to know what relationships are going to be healthy for you, what healthy feels like for you. As Peter says, earlier in the presentation, we all kind of see toxic as different. We all see healthy as different, and understanding what that is for you is probably the most important piece, because then you are better able to weed out, the things that don't fit you the best, and be able to honor that and know that that's okay. We can jump to the next slide. I'll go over this briefly. I found a couple of books and podcasts. I know that's a big thing these days. I'm a big podcaster myself personally, that offer some really good support and examples from people who have experienced narcissistic abuse or who are in progress of healing from it. Take a look and check them out if you are interested or know someone who might need these resources for themselves in the future. Excuse me. And then the final slide, kind of as a shameless plug, as Peter mentioned, I am the director for the Center for Healthy Families at the University of Maryland in the School of Public Health. This is a training clinic, so all of the interns that we have are master's level couple and family therapist students who are learning to do this amazing work. And so we take individuals, couples, and families. We're hoping to also begin hosting groups in the future. But we have a bit of a wait list, but we're hoping to get some more relational cases in particular. I know, dealing with toxic behaviors, we're talking about our personal relationships in general, family, romantic. The CHF has you covered if you are a Maryland resident or live in Maryland, and you're looking for services. Our students are amazing. They're very bright and they love this work. And we would be happy to journey with you through your healing process. So I'm going to stop talking. I think that's all for me. Thank you all again for this invitation. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope I am able to answer a few questions here at the end for anyone who might want to share.
Yeah. I have a quick question for you, Tiara.
Yes.
And at the Center for Healthy Families, are you able to do provide services for people outside of Maryland as well, virtually? Do you do
That's
that?
a great question. Because it is a training clinic, our students and our clients have to be physically located in Maryland, even with our telehealth services.
Okay.
So unfortunately, that's not something that we can offer at this time.
Okay.
But
Okay.
if someone were to need that or need referral for somewhere, I'm also happy. I think my email's on the last slide. Feel free to reach out, or even to the CHF email. We've sent people referrals as well for other areas that have been interested and we haven't been able to serve.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. That was a lot of information packed into a nice, concise chunk of time here. And of course, we could spend so much more time on these issues. So for everybody on tonight's call, we had been recording just this